It's June 30th, and this is the morning edition of Mike and Bike. I'm listening to This American Life. It's an episode covering the state of affairs between Israel and Palestine in the early 2000s, just when the Oslo peace process had fallen apart. So they have some reporters in both the West Bank and in Israel interviewing citizens about their thoughts of peace and coexistence. And it is interesting listening to all these old episodes of this radio show where they're covering stories, over a decade ago, and you can look at them with with hindsight, and what's happened in Israel and Palestine since this show was made. Not a whole lot. It's kind of been status quo. I said the bombings and violence isn't as prominent as it once was, but certainly life hasn't gotten significantly better for Palestinians. I think Israelis have kind of gotten to a mode where they can just kind of the Palestinian affairs are over there, and the big wall blocks it off. But the Palestinians are kind of kept in their little gulag of the West Bank, locked in under an occupation. There doesn't seem to really be any end in sight. One would wonder if maybe all of the things going on in the Middle East with the wars in Syria and Iraq could have impacts on what goes on with Palestinians and such. Who knows? If we were to have greater stability eventually in places like Syria, maybe there would be less pressure on Israel and more of a willingness to compromise. Who knows? One of the theories that I'm toying with is that you can't really have peace, or peace isn't really possible unless the facts on the ground change, and that peace processes themselves can't really succeed in and of themselves. Peace processes, I think, work when the facts have changed to support it. Well, without the facts having changed, then your peace process isn't going to go anywhere. So peace only happens, I think, when both sides have already kind of come closer together in what they want to achieve before they even start talking. And when both sides feel they have more to gain than to lose from peace. But as long as you have even just one side that feels like it has a significant amount of to lose from peace, then it's unlikely you're going to have peace. Why would you? It's not in their interests. Not as they perceive it. And right now in Israel today, they have very little incentive. Life for Israelis is pretty comfortable. They've been able to manage unrest with the Palestinians to such a degree that there hasn't been much blowback in Israel anymore with bombs or rockets or other kinds of violence. There's relatively little that they have to gain by a peace agreement. And in fact, Israel just stands to lose. They risk a lot. Almost inevitably, they would have to withdraw from a number of settlements in Palestinian areas, which is just politically very tough for Israel. I mean, there'd be a lot of Israelis who wouldn't like that, having to leave their homes. Whenever Israel has to remove settlers, it creates big political backlashes in Israel. You have all these people, who refuse to leave their homes in the settlements, and gets in the news. The confrontation with the army as the army tries to remove them, and a lot of right-wing people get very upset about that. So why would any Israeli government want to go through all that pain of a massive removal of settlers from the West Bank and all of the inevitable protests and political upheaval that would cause? So just, who wants that? And for what? What would you gain from a peace? What would Israel gain from peace? A theoretical promise of no violence from the Palestinian government, but who trusts them? They don't really have a lot of authority over their own people. A lot of the groups that commit violence are kind of independent. The state of affairs with Palestinian government is pretty anarchic. So you'd kind of have, so Israel, in some senses, could become more insecure. They'd have less control over their security with a peace agreement with the Palestinians. I think the peace that they have in Northern Ireland now is a very interesting and useful case study in how peace comes about. I actually view that peace in Northern Ireland is not the result of peace processes and negotiations. That's just the wrapper or the finishing touch on the facts on the ground that had changed, that made peace possible. And what I believe has made peace really a reality in Northern Ireland is the fact that it is how both the nation of Ireland and the United Kingdom have evolved in the last 40, 50 years. I mean, Ireland, the Irish Republic, is no longer some backwater economic underling. So Ireland is a member of the EU, so is the UK. Both nations have adopted a lot of standard, they've harmonized a lot. I mean, the UK and Ireland are closer together in law and custom and even economic prosperity than ever. And I think it is that development of primarily the Republic of Ireland that narrowed the difference between the two states. So if you're a Catholic in Northern Ireland and you see that, or a Protestant in Northern Ireland rather, maybe even more for the Protestants, and you see that your neighbors across the border in the Republic of Ireland live pretty much the way you do now and have many of the same cultural norms and even same economic status, the possibility of unification isn't as big of a deal anymore. On top of that, I think a lot of people support for radicalism in the Republic of Ireland has diminished as they've gotten richer. It's as people just aren't as interested in supporting wackos anymore. So it's kind of the theory that you give everybody a good job and food on the table, and a lot of the hostility goes out the window. And I think that is fundamentally what happened in Northern Ireland. So a lot of the poison was already gone and diminished when they started their peace processes in the 90s. Hello.
Are you going to Avondale?
I'm sorry? Yeah.
Be careful. There was, I heard shots and a bunch of police were at Avondale.
Yikes. I've got to go right to the end of 520.
Yeah, I was right where we're at. Well, it was at the car wash.
Oh boy. Okay. Thanks. Thanks. Wow. That cyclist said that there were shots fired and there's some police cars near where my office is. He told me to be careful. Well, I'll watch closely, see what the police are saying as I get closer there. Strange things can happen. So back to Israel and Palestine. I think my current theory is that there won't be peace there until there is some significant change in the facts on the ground. And one idea that comes to mind is that if the rest of the Arab world, or all the neighboring Arab countries, became financially and economically prosperous, and they lost their desire to be hostile towards Israel, that perhaps that would change things. Then the Palestinians would have an example of good government and economic policies to look to. And there wouldn't be the tacit support for ongoing hostilities from their neighbors. I don't know. Could that happen? Seems improbable right now, unfortunately. There's no Middle Eastern economic renaissance on the horizon like there was with the European Union that helped bring Ireland and Britain closer together. No, it just doesn't seem like there's anything that will be happening in the near future or in the foreseeable future that would really change the dynamics in Israel and Palestine. As long as Israel feels fairly confident and safe, they are not going to do anything. And as long as the Palestinians don't really see any hope for their future, no economic prosperity in their region and so forth, and that there's not much hope there either. In the long run, it doesn't seem that the status quo will be sustainable, though. The Palestinian demographics themselves kind of make it seem like there might not be much of a or there's going to be more and more pressure for Israel as the population of Palestine grows in relation to that of Israel. With a bigger and bigger population, it'll be harder and harder for Israel to contain it. And you'd likely have greater and greater poverty and so forth as well. That would create more anger and be the tinder for more opposition. Well, I'm getting much closer to my office now. This is the last little stretch. Haven't seen any police. I hope there's no gunmen in the bushes. I mean, I would assume if there was a fugitive or somebody out here that you'd have the police blocking out the force, but I don't see anybody. I'm genuinely nervous here because that cyclist was telling me there were geared shots. How bizarre. But I don't see anything. I see somebody walking their dog. That doesn't appear threatening. Hello. Cars seem to be moving just fine. No police roadblocks. It's looking okay. Well, I'm feeling more confident that nothing bad is going to happen. I've only got like a block left to go, if that. So here I am, back at the office. And that brings to a close another edition of Mike and Bike. See you all tomorrow.